What is going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders. I am very grateful to have your attention, at least for the next 15 minutes of this episode. Forward Thinking Founders is a podcast where I interview pre-seed and seed stage founders about their products, what they want to build into the world, and why. We dive into how they spend their time, what's their vision, what's their origin stories, all these things, so you can learn all about what's coming tomorrow. Because these companies haven't hit critical scale yet. Most of them haven't hit product market fit. These are just early stage companies, and the big question is, what can this be? And in this podcast, we bring that out. So with that, I really hope you enjoy your time listening to today's episode. And I've already done 200 plus, so if you like this one, listen to some of the other ones, like with Imadi Kund, Austin Allred, Leah Culver. We have great interviews, so check it out, enjoy the repository, and for now, let's get into today's episode. Here we go. All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we talk to founders about their companies, their visions for the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to JT Garwood, who's a co-founder of bttn. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Oh, it's going very well. Excited to be speaking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on the podcast. Looking forward to learning more about what you are working on. For people that haven't heard of your company, what are you working on? What is bttn?
Yeah, so bttn is the next generation healthcare distributor. What that means is we're a B2B e-commerce platform that allows healthcare providers of all types to source their supplies more efficiently and save some time and money. We like to think of ourselves as the future of medical supply.
So walk me through, I guess, two things. One, like who would be kind of the personas that, kind of like your customers that use the product, that interface with you, and can kind of walk us through like what's an average experience of one of your customers? If they were to use the product, kind of work with you, can you kind of walk us down like what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting with the, who it is exactly that bttn perceives as our target market. In healthcare, really, there's two sides of this system, right? There's the health systems, which are the big hospitals that you can imagine, I'm sure that you've been to in the past. And then the other side are the more private practices, whether it's a alternate site provider, which might be a, surgery center, a physician office, emergency care, or a dentist, right? Also, we serve long-term care facilities, but we serve that side of the market. That's sort of like the SMB side. So we focus on those more solo practitioners and serving those small businesses. And then so for really what it is, how it works, I think it's really important to understand the baseline of this market, which is that, healthcare providers are begging today for two things. The first is transparency, and the second is diversification in their purchasing experience. And that's like a lot of what bttn is trying to solve at any given point. So if you are a healthcare practitioner, like a dentist or a physician, you just go to our website, you search for the products that you know and love, the name brands that you always see, and you just make a purchase. There's no pre-qualification required, which is standard in this industry. There's no contracts required to use bttn, which is very standard in this industry. There's no minimum order quantities, right? If you see where I'm going here, we like to do things a little bit different and build an experience for our customers that's really focused on making things super easy, flexible, and fast. And we want to make this experience as easy as using any e-commerce platform in the world, but for the most critical supplies in the United States.
And I'm curious, kind of tell me a little bit about the origin story here. Like, why did you decide to start bttn and kind of tackle this problem, build this solution?
Yeah. I'll start with the why, because I love talking about this. My co-founder Jack and I, we were very aware of the dysfunction that was existing today in the medical supply market, right? There was a general lack of technology, right? But more importantly, a huge lack of trusted e-commerce channels. And there was an overall deep hatred, honestly, for the current incumbent suppliers in the market. And so there was this huge antiquated market that was medical supply. It's about $300+ billion a year funneling through this system. And it just really felt like it had suffered for too long and deserved a modern solution, right? And then we had the global pandemic slap us on the head, right? Which caused massive disruption, both in supply channels as well as in the experience of every single individual and every single healthcare practitioner in the world. And the stories that were coming out of these supply chain concerns, right? PPE shortages, right? These hospitals that were overwhelmed, these ERs that didn't know what to do, these surgeries being put off. This was having a deep impact in what we perceived as our local communities. And so Jack and I started to develop this, I wouldn't call it rage, but I'd say it's a dedication and passion for trying to say, like, we can bring a modern technology solution to save these folks time and money. And that like translates to the how, right, of it. And it really comes down to, I don't know, I'd say two angles. The first is definitely, like any founder, you're hopefully a period of bootstrapping, right, and proving our thesis. And then secondly is just a whole lot of grit and sticking in it and trying to figure out what the best solution is. When we started, we needed to prove this initial thesis. Super simple. Would healthcare providers purchase their most critical supplies from a no-name, random internet startup? That was the thesis. And we needed to prove that, right, to show that this could be a long-term opportunity for us in this market. And so my co-founder, Jack, and I, like I mentioned, him and I are lifetime best friends. He's a computer scientist by nature, right? We've always been able to build things together and build businesses. And so we were the initial investors in the business, right? And self-financed for a period. And we were really just trying to build and see if this intuition that we had was correct, right? That could we build on all these trends happening? And so we launched a very ugly button beta in the early days, and it literally had 60 different medical supplies on it, right? Not top quality supplies, not top quality pricing. And I started to make calls, right? I started to call dentists. I started to call physicians. I started talking to them about their problems, about what was wrong with their supply experience. What did they need? And Jack was building out the platform, right? Building features that were needed for each one of these practitioners to feel safe buying from us over the internet. And then we got some very early and immediate traction, which has turned into this much larger pursuit to be the next generation healthcare distributor.
And let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Like, as you look into the future, as you build this, day to day, I guess two questions, and I'll split it up into one. What is your day to day look like? I mean, you just talked about it's about the origin story, but today, you have a co-founder, you split responsibilities. What do you spend your time on? And then the next question will be a little bit more about the future. But tell me, like, what's your day to day look like?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's much different now, right? 11 months into this journey, Button has 35 employees. We're very fortunate to have an office, 5,500 customers across the country. Serving millions of medical supplies distributed throughout the United States. But like any founder, it varies a lot day to day, like we were talking about before we started recording. Mainly what I do a ton of is I address very hard problems with my people, right? It's providing clarity, it's providing trust and transparency. I get to interact with my customers a whole heck of a lot of the time, which is fantastic. So I can always make sure I'm listening and understanding where the direction of the company needs to go. I get to engage and encourage what I really like to do, very thought-provoking conversations with both insiders and outsiders within healthcare on topics. And my team gets to challenge me, right? Poke holes in what it is that we're doing. Are we doing the right things? Do we have the right people? Personally, I love to get a workout, eat some good food, have a laugh, read a book, just simple things like that.
And kind of zooming out now, like into the future, if you take that day to day and you kind of extrapolate for a decade or two, like, what do you see this looking like in a decade or two? And in other words, what's your big vision here and what direction are you rowing in?
The simple answer to that is the long tail of this business is there needs to be a trusted, easy to use, go-to brand name medical supply marketplace on the internet that every single doctor knows by name and trusts in the United States, right? Button will be that company. There is not that company today, and we will be that company in the future. So to dive a level deeper, it's really about modernizing that acquisition of medical supply, right? So as we're building the platform, winning customers, we have this true North Star of just helping these practitioners save energy and time and what amounts to a ton of administrative overhead in this procurement of supplies, right? Everybody in the United States is very aware of the healthcare worker shortage that we're experiencing, and that's not going to end anytime soon, right? And these people need to save every single available moment that they can and not spend 5 to 15 hours a week just getting the supplies that they need in order to transact and use and treat patients more effectively. And so really what it's all about is providing that world-class experience that we all know and love as consumers to the businesses in this country that need it the most. And so when I think about the vision, it's just about being that easy to use brand name platform that people say, I have transparency, I have trust, and I know Button can give me the things that I need the most.
And in order to make that happen, like you need some help, right? It takes a village to make a startup work and scale. So my question for you is, how can the forward-thinking founders community help? Are you hiring, raising money, looking for partners, customers? How can we assist?
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking for help. I'm unabashedly always looking for help in this community. Yes, we're absolutely hiring. We're hiring across all roles. And we are rapidly expanding, both our technology, sales, marketing, and now supply chain and distribution teams within Button. And so I highly encourage anybody, please visit our website and please visit our job board, constantly uploading new positions each and every day. And then I think I have a more thoughtful ask, because to understand Button is to really understand what's going on in this market. And one topic that gets constantly thrown into this conversation is like modern medicine, right? If you look at the investments being made in health tech, and if you look at the investments being made in med tech, it's all about doing this modern, amazing approach to treat patients more effectively, right? The advancements that we're making in transplant technology and all these, cell-based tech, it's amazing. But then contrast that experience when you have received care and gotten the bill from your ER. Does that seem modern to you? Does that experience seem as modern as all the different investment that's going into this category, right? So I ask you, next time you are caught in that experience, right, and you know that your hospital or your healthcare provider is struggling, think about the antiquation that they're facing on the back end, right? And what would digitizing it, what would bringing it into this modern category do to add transparency, to add trust? How could that improve all of our lives, right? How could that improve the cost of healthcare for each and every one of us? So yes, I will always ask for literal help, but then I also have to throw in that special sauce of there's some bigger thinking going on here that hopefully Button addresses in the near future.
Well, that situation that you just mentioned, I dealt with that in the last year, and it needs to be brought into the future because it's no fun. It's no fun. So I'm excited that you came onto the podcast and share what you're doing with us. I'm excited that you're working on this. I guess my last question for you is, if someone wanted to learn more, just curious, or as a potential customer or anything like this, like, how can they learn more about you? Do you have a website, social media presence, an email address? How can they learn more?
Absolutely. Yeah. Highly encourage you to visit us at www.bttnusa.com. That's our main domain. You can get in touch with us and also shop our catalog, do whatever you'd like. We're very active across all social channels. And then please feel free to personally reach out to me or my co-founder or anybody at the Button team directly through LinkedIn or other mediums. That should do it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.